There is a silent moment in every person's life that never gets announced. No applause, no warning, no dramatic music in the background. It is the moment you realize that nobody is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your friends, not society, not luck. This moment often arrives quietly late at night when distractions fade and honesty becomes unavoidable. You look at your life and feel something heavy. Not failure, not sadness, but regret mixed with awareness. You start to see that your dreams are not dead. They are waiting for you to stop treating them casually. Because the truth is painful but freeing. Your life will not change until you decide that you are worth discipline. Your future will not improve until you decide that your time matters. And success does not begin with motivation. It begins the day you take yourself seriously. This audiobook is not here to hype you for a moment. It is here to reprogram how you see yourself, to move you from wishing to deciding, from hoping to acting, from potential to proof. Listen carefully, because if you apply even one chapter fully, your life will not stay the same. Chapter 1. Why most people never win. Most people never lose loudly. They lose quietly, slowly, and politely. They lose in a way that feels safe, socially acceptable, and invisible to others. They wake up every day doing just enough to survive, but never enough to change. They call it patience, but it is hesitation. They call it balance, but it is avoidance. They call it being realistic, but in truth, it is fear dressed up as wisdom. The reason most people never win in life is not because they lack intelligence, opportunity, or even ambition. It is because they never decide that their life deserves urgency. They treat their days as unlimited. They treat their time as cheap. They treat their potential as something they can always return to later, not realizing that later quietly expires while they are distracted. From a young age, many people are taught how to follow instructions, how to fit into systems, how to meet minimum requirements, but very few are taught how to take themselves seriously. They are taught to wait for permission, to wait for validation, to wait for certainty, to wait until someone else believes in them first. Over time, this waiting becomes a habit, a dangerous one, because life does not reward waiting. Life rewards movement, and when you delay movement long enough, stagnation begins to feel normal. You stop feeling uncomfortable with mediocrity. You start adjusting your dreams downward so they match your effort instead of raising your effort to meet your dreams. The tragedy is not that people fail. Failure is honest. Failure teaches. Failure sharpens. The tragedy is that people never fully commit. They keep one foot in and one foot out of their own life. They pursue goals casually, as if success is something that should arrive gently without demanding sacrifice, structure, or discomfort. They want progress without pressure, results without responsibility, change without change. And when reality refuses to cooperate with these expectations, they grow frustrated, confused, and bitter. They begin to believe that life is unfair, that others are lucky, that the system is rigged, not realizing that the real issue is far simpler and far more uncomfortable to admit. They never took themselves seriously enough to demand more from their own behavior. When you do not take yourself seriously, your actions reflect that truth long before your words do. You postpone important work. You allow distractions to control your schedule. You break promises to yourself and excuse it with comfort. You say you want more, but your daily habits reveal that you are comfortable with less. Over time, this creates an internal split. On one side is the version of you that dreams, imagines, and desires more. On the other side is the version of you that procrastinates, delays, and avoids discomfort. This internal conflict drains energy. It creates guilt without action, awareness without discipline, and ambition without execution. And eventually, the dreaming side grows quiet, not because it disappeared, but because it got tired of being ignored. Most people underestimate how much damage inconsistency does to the mind. Every time you tell yourself you will start tomorrow and then don't, something breaks internally. Every time you promise discipline and choose comfort instead, your self-trust weakens. And when self-trust is broken, confidence cannot survive. Motivation becomes unreliable. Focus becomes fragile. You begin seeking external encouragement because your internal voice no longer feels credible. This is why many people consume motivational content endlessly but never change. They are trying to replace self-respect with inspiration, not realizing that inspiration fades quickly, but identity endures. Winning in life requires a shift that many people resist because it removes their favorite excuse. It requires accepting that nobody is coming to organize your life for you. Nobody is coming to manage your time, protect your focus, or build your discipline. No one will force you to sleep earlier, work harder, or think deeper. Once you understand this fully, there is no one left to blame. And for many people, blame is more comfortable than responsibility. Blame allows you to stay the same while pretending that circumstances are the problem. Responsibility demands that you evolve. The day you take yourself seriously is the day you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop asking how little effort you can give and still feel productive. You stop measuring your growth against others to feel temporarily satisfied. Instead, you start measuring your actions against your own standards. You begin asking harder questions, such as why you waste time you will never get back, why you tolerate habits that weaken you, why you keep delaying the very actions that could change everything. These questions are uncomfortable, but they are powerful. They force honesty. And honesty is the beginning of transformation. Most people never win because winning requires structure, and structure feels restrictive to those who are addicted to freedom without responsibility. They want flexibility without discipline, leisure without labor, reward without repetition. But structure is not a prison. Structure is protection. It protects your energy from chaos. It protects your focus from noise. It protects your future from your worst impulses. People who win understand this. They design their days intentionally. They create routines not because they lack creativity, but because they respect their time. They understand that success is not built in moments of inspiration, but in systems that function even when motivation disappears. Another reason most people never win is because they underestimate the cost of distraction. They live in a world that constantly pulls their attention away from deep work, deep thinking, and deep growth. Instead of mastering one path, they scatter their energy across many directions. Instead of committing to a process, they jump between options, always searching for the easier route. But there is no shortcut to becoming disciplined. There is no hack for consistency, and there is no alternative to showing up repeatedly when no one is watching. Those who win understand that boredom is often the gateway to mastery. They do not escape it, they endure it. There is also fear beneath the surface that many people never confront. Fear of failure, yes, but more dangerously, fear of success. Because success demands that you leave behind the version of yourself that feels familiar. It demands that you outgrow certain habits, environments, and even relationships. For many, staying the same feels safer than becoming more, so they unconsciously sabotage their progress. They delay, they overthink, they start and stop repeatedly, they remain busy but never effective. And years later, they wonder why their life never changed, unaware that they spent their best years protecting comfort instead of building capacity. Winning is not about being perfect. It is about being serious. Serious about how you use your time. Serious about how you speak to yourself. Serious about what you tolerate in your daily behavior. When you take yourself seriously, your standards rise naturally. You no longer accept inconsistency as normal. You no longer excuse laziness as rest. You no longer confuse movement with progress. You begin to align your actions with the future you claim to want. And alignment is powerful. It removes inner conflict. It creates momentum. It builds self-respect. Most people never win because they underestimate how much power exists in ordinary days. They believe success is built in dramatic moments, not realizing that it is built in quiet mornings, disciplined afternoons, and intentional nights. It is built in the choice to do the work even when no one is applauding. It is built in the decision to improve slightly, daily, without immediate reward. Those who win understand that life compounds. Small efforts repeated consistently create massive results over time. Those who lose ignore this truth because it does not offer instant gratification. When you finally take yourself seriously, something subtle but profound happens. You stop seeking permission. You stop waiting for confidence. You stop needing validation to act. You understand that action creates clarity, not the other way around. You accept that discomfort is part of growth, not a sign that something is wrong. And most importantly, you begin to respect your own word. When you say you will do something, you do it. That alone separates winners from everyone else. This chapter is not meant to judge you, it is meant to wake you up. If you see yourself in these words, it is not a weakness, it is awareness. And awareness is powerful, because once you see the pattern, you can change it. Once you understand why most people never win, you gain the option to stop living like most people. And that choice, made consistently, changes everything. Chapter 2. Discipline is self-respect in action. Discipline is one of the most misunderstood words in personal growth. Most people hear it and immediately think of restriction, force, pressure, or a life stripped of enjoyment. They imagine discipline as something harsh, something cold, something meant only for extreme people or rigid personalities. Because of this misunderstanding, they spend their entire lives trying to succeed without it, not realizing that avoiding discipline is the very reason they feel stuck, scattered, and internally exhausted. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. Lack of discipline is. At its core, discipline is not about controlling your life. It is about honoring it. It is the visible proof that you respect yourself enough to do what needs to be done, even when comfort invites you to stop. When you lack discipline, your life is controlled by moods, impulses, and external noise. When you build discipline, your life is guided by intention. This is not a small shift. This is the difference between drifting and directing. Every human being has two selves living inside them at the same time. One is the present self, the part of you that wants ease, pleasure, rest, and immediate relief. The other is the future self, the version of you that wants growth, pride, strength, and long-term fulfillment. Discipline is the bridge between these two selves. Without it, the present self always wins, and the future self silently pays the price. With discipline, You begin making decisions that protect the future you, even when the present moment feels uncomfortable. People often say they want confidence, clarity, and motivation, but they overlook the fact that these qualities are not gifts. They are earned. Confidence is built when you repeatedly prove to yourself that you can be trusted. Clarity emerges when you take action instead of overthinking. Motivation grows when you see yourself progressing through effort. Discipline is what makes all of this possible. Without it, your internal voice becomes weak. You stop believing yourself. You say you will do things, and then fail to follow through. Over time, your own words lose meaning to you, and when that happens, everything becomes harder. There is a quiet psychological damage that occurs when discipline is missing. It does not arrive dramatically. It builds slowly. You begin waking up later than you planned. You delay tasks that matter. You give yourself excuses that sound reasonable in the moment. And each time you do this, a small message is sent to your mind. My comfort is more important than my commitment. This message, repeated daily, shapes identity. You do not become undisciplined overnight. You become undisciplined through repeated self-betrayal. Self-respect is not a feeling, it is a pattern of behavior. You cannot think your way into self-respect. You must act your way into it. This is why discipline feels difficult at first. It challenges the version of you that has grown comfortable breaking promises to yourself. But every time you choose discipline, even in something small, your internal structure strengthens. You begin to stand taller mentally. You feel more grounded. You trust yourself more. And when self-trust grows, fear loses power. Many people search for purpose, but purpose is revealed through responsibility, not reflection. Discipline forces you into responsibility. It asks you to show up even when conditions are not ideal. It teaches you how to operate without applause. It trains you to rely on structure instead of emotion. This is essential because emotions are unstable. They rise and fall without warning. Discipline is stable. It remains when motivation disappears. And motivation always disappears at some point. Those who rely on motivation fail when it fades. Those who rely on discipline continue. One of the greatest lies people tell themselves is that discipline will make life smaller. In reality, discipline makes life larger. It expands your capacity. It increases what you can handle. It gives you control over your time, your energy, and your direction. When you lack discipline, even simple tasks feel heavy. When you build discipline, heavy tasks become manageable. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes normal. This is how growth actually happens, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through gradual strengthening. Discipline also teaches you how to sit with discomfort without escaping it. This is a rare skill in a world designed to keep you constantly entertained. Most people avoid discomfort instantly. They distract themselves. They scroll. They consume. They escape. But every time you escape discomfort, you reinforce weakness. Discipline asks you to stay, to finish the task, to complete the work, to face the resistance instead of running from it. And every time you do this, something powerful happens. Your tolerance increases. Your resilience grows. Your mind becomes quieter and stronger. There is a reason disciplined people appear calm under pressure. It is not because life is easier for them. It is because they have trained themselves to act without panic. Discipline builds internal order. It removes chaos from your decisions. You no longer ask yourself whether you feel like doing something. You already know what needs to be done. This removes mental friction. It saves energy. It frees attention for higher-level thinking. Undisciplined minds are noisy. Disciplined minds are clear. Another truth most people avoid is that discipline reveals priorities. You always make time for what truly matters to you. When someone says they do not have time, what they often mean is that they have not decided that the task deserves discipline. Time is created through structure, not availability. When you respect yourself, you respect your time. You stop wasting it on activities that offer momentary pleasure but long-term regret. You begin investing it into actions that compound. This shift alone separates average lives from exceptional ones. Discipline is also deeply connected to identity. The more disciplined you become, the more you see yourself as someone who follows through. This identity becomes self-reinforcing. You do not want to break your streak. You do not want to disappoint the version of yourself you are building. Over time, discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like alignment. You are no longer forcing yourself to act against your nature. You are shaping your nature through repeated action. Many people misunderstand rest as the opposite of discipline. It is not. Rest without discipline becomes indulgence. Discipline without rest becomes burnout. True discipline includes intentional rest. It includes recovery planned with purpose, not escape disguised as self-care. Disciplined people rest to recharge, not to avoid responsibility. They understand the difference. This balance allows them to sustain effort over long periods, which is where real success is built. When you practice discipline consistently, something profound happens that few people talk about. Your self-image changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. You stop identifying as someone with potential and start identifying as someone with proof. This shift is subtle, but it transforms everything. Your posture changes. Your speech changes. Your expectations change. And the world responds differently to you, not because it suddenly became kinder, but because you became more solid. Discipline is not about becoming rigid or joyless. It is about becoming reliable. Reliable to yourself. Reliable to your goals. Reliable to your future. When you are reliable, progress becomes inevitable. You no longer need to chase success. You build it quietly through daily action. And one day, people look at your life and call it luck, not realizing that it was discipline all along. This chapter exists to remove illusions, to show you that discipline is not a personality trait you are born with or without. It is a skill, a muscle, something you train, something you strengthen, and like any muscle, it grows through resistance. The discomfort you feel when choosing discipline is not a sign of weakness. It is evidence of growth. When you finally understand that discipline is self-respect in action, you stop seeing it as punishment and start seeing it as protection. Protection from regret. Protection from wasted potential. Protection from a future where you look back and realize that you were capable of more but chose comfort instead. Discipline is how you honor the life you were given. It is how you prove to yourself that you matter enough to show up fully. And once you begin living this way, there is no going back, because nothing compares to the quiet confidence of knowing that you can rely on yourself. Chapter 3. Your habits are quietly deciding your destiny. Most people believe their future will be shaped by one big decision, one powerful opportunity, or one dramatic turning point. They imagine success as a single door that suddenly opens and changes everything. But this belief is one of the most dangerous illusions because it allows people to ignore the quiet, ordinary choices they make every day. In reality, Destiny is not created in moments of intensity. It is built in moments of repetition. What you repeatedly do, especially when no one is watching, is what your life becomes. Your habits are not small. They only appear small because they are familiar. They are the silent architects of your identity. Every habit you practice is training your mind and body to move in a certain direction. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are always becoming something. You are either becoming more disciplined or more distracted, more focused or more fragmented, more intentional or more reactive. There is no neutral ground. Life does not pause while you decide. It moves forward, carrying you in the direction of your daily behaviors. Many people spend years thinking about change while continuing to live the same way. They wait for a perfect plan, a perfect mood, or a perfect moment to begin. But habits do not respond to intention alone. They respond to repetition. You cannot think your way into a new life while behaving like the old version of yourself. Change begins when behavior changes, not when desire increases. This is why so many people feel frustrated despite wanting growth. Their wants are strong, but their habits are stronger. Every habit you repeat is casting a vote for the person you will be in the future. When you choose comfort over effort, you vote for weakness. When you choose discipline over ease, you vote for strength. When you choose distraction over focus, you vote for confusion. When you choose consistency over impulse, you vote for clarity. These votes accumulate daily. No single vote decides everything, but over time, the majority wins. And one day, you wake up living inside the result of decisions you barely remember making. What makes habits so powerful is that they shape your standards without asking permission. Once something becomes habitual, it no longer feels like a choice. It feels normal. This is why people defend habits that harm them. They are not protecting the habit itself. They are protecting their sense of normalcy. Breaking a habit feels like breaking identity, and identity resists change aggressively. This is why growth feels uncomfortable. It challenges who you believe yourself to be. Most people underestimate how quickly small habits compound. They think skipping one workout, delaying one task, or wasting one evening does not matter. And in isolation, it doesn't. But habits are never isolated. They are patterns, and patterns create momentum. Momentum makes repetition easier. Over time, the direction you are moving becomes harder to reverse. This is why it is easier to prevent decline than to recover from it. And it is why early discipline is far less painful than late regret. There is also an emotional attachment people develop to unproductive habits. These habits provide escape, relief, and comfort in moments of stress. They distract from discomfort instead of resolving it. But comfort habits always demand payment later. They borrow peace from the future to ease the present. Discipline habits do the opposite. They demand effort now and reward you later. Most people choose immediate relief because the cost feels invisible in the moment. But life always collects what is owed. Habits also shape how you think. An undisciplined routine creates a noisy mind. A disciplined routine creates a calm one. When your day lacks structure, your thoughts scatter. You feel overwhelmed, even when tasks are simple. You start many things but finish few. This mental fragmentation drains energy and creates a constant sense of being behind. On the other hand, when your habits are aligned, your mind becomes quieter, decisions become easier, focus deepens. You stop reacting to life and start directing it. Another reason habits are so powerful is because they operate even when motivation is absent. Motivation is unreliable. It rises when conditions are favorable and disappears when they are not. Habits do not negotiate. They execute. This is why disciplined people continue making progress even during difficult seasons. Their habits carry them forward when emotions cannot. Without strong habits, every challenge feels like a crisis. With strong habits, challenges become manageable. Many people say they want freedom, but they build habits that trap them. Freedom is not the absence of structure. It is the presence of self-control. When you lack control over your habits, you are controlled by impulses. When you gain control, your options expand. You gain the freedom to choose long-term growth over short-term pleasure. This is the kind of freedom that creates confidence, not anxiety. Habits also reveal your true priorities. Not what you say matters, but what you consistently act on. You may say your future matters, but if your habits do not support it, your behavior is telling a different story. This disconnect creates inner tension. Over time, this tension turns into dissatisfaction, self-criticism, and frustration. People often mistake this feeling for lack of purpose, when in reality, it is misalignment. Your habits and your values are not pointing in the same direction. Changing habits requires honesty, not harsh judgment, but clear observation. You must be willing to look at your daily routines without excuses, to see where time leaks away, to recognize which behaviors strengthen you and which ones weaken you. This awareness alone is powerful, because once you see the pattern, you can interrupt it, and interruption is the beginning of change. Habits are not changed through force alone. They are changed through environment, repetition, and identity. You behave differently when your surroundings support discipline. You repeat behaviors that are easy to access. You sustain habits that align with how you see yourself. This is why real change feels like a lifestyle shift, not a temporary effort. You are not just doing something new. You are becoming someone new. The most important habit you can build is the habit of showing up. Not perfectly, not intensely, but consistently. Showing up on days when progress feels invisible. Showing up when energy is low. Showing up when results are delayed. This habit alone separates those who transform their lives from those who remain stuck thinking about change. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum creates belief. Belief fuels further action. And the cycle continues. One day, often without realizing when it happened, you look at your life and notice that things feel different. Not because of one big event, but because your habits have quietly reshaped your reality. Your confidence is stronger, your focus is sharper, your standards are higher, and people around you sense it. They may not understand it, but they respect it. What they are responding to is the power of aligned habits. This chapter exists to remind you of a simple but uncomfortable truth. Your future is not being decided someday. It is being decided today, through actions so small they feel insignificant. But nothing that repeats daily is insignificant. Habits are destiny practiced in advance, and when you take control of them, you take control of your life. Chapter 4. Stop waiting for confidence. It is built through action. One of the most destructive beliefs quietly controlling people's lives is the idea that confidence must come first. People tell themselves that once they feel ready, once they feel sure, once fear disappears, then they will act. They wait for a future version of themselves who feels stronger, braver, and more prepared. But that version never arrives, because confidence is not a prerequisite for action, it is the result of it. Waiting for confidence is like waiting for strength before lifting weight. Strength is built by lifting. Confidence is built by moving forward, while fear is still present. Fear does not disappear when you begin. It fades when you prove to yourself that you can survive discomfort. Most people misunderstand fear and interpret it as a warning to stop, when in reality, it is often a signal that you are standing at the edge of growth. The mind resists unfamiliar territory because it is wired for safety, not progress. When you wait for fear to leave before acting, you give fear authority over your decisions. Over time, fear becomes the leader of your life, deciding what you attempt and what you avoid. Confidence is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is quiet and grounded. It comes from evidence, not emotion. Every time you do something difficult despite doubt, you collect proof. Proof that you can handle pressure. Proof that you can follow through. Proof that uncertainty does not destroy you. This proof accumulates slowly, but it is powerful. It changes how you speak to yourself. It changes how you respond to challenges. It changes how you carry yourself through the world. Many people live with an invisible habit of self-protection. They avoid action not because they are incapable, but because action exposes them to failure. They would rather stay in the comfort of imagination than risk confronting reality. But imagination without execution becomes torture. It creates a constant awareness of what could be, paired with the pain of never trying. This internal tension grows heavier with time. It shows up as anxiety, restlessness, and dissatisfaction, not because life is unfair, but because potential is being suppressed. Action resolves overthinking. Most clarity comes after movement, not before it. When you act, even imperfectly, you learn, you adjust, you refine. When you wait, your mind creates endless scenarios that drain energy without producing results. This is why people who think the most often do the least. They confuse mental activity with progress. In reality, progress is physical. It requires motion, and motion builds confidence naturally, without forcing it. There is a powerful shift that occurs the moment you stop asking yourself how you feel and start asking yourself what needs to be done. This shift removes emotion from decision-making and replaces it with responsibility. Disciplined action does not require you to feel inspired. It requires you to show up. When you show up repeatedly, confidence begins to form quietly in the background. You do not notice it growing at first. One day, you simply realize that you no longer doubt yourself the way you used to. Confidence also grows when you learn to keep promises to yourself under pressure. Anyone can commit when motivation is high. Very few can commit when resistance appears. Every time you act despite resistance, you send a message to your mind that you are dependable. Dependability builds trust. Trust builds confidence. This is not theory. It is psychological conditioning. Your mind believes what your behavior proves. Another truth people avoid is that confidence is often destroyed not by failure, but by avoidance. When you avoid challenges, your fear grows larger than the challenge itself. The task becomes heavier in your mind than it ever would have been in reality. You begin to doubt your ability before even trying. This self-doubt compounds and spreads into other areas of life. You become cautious, hesitant, and overly defensive. Confidence does not die suddenly. It erodes slowly through inaction. People who appear confident are not fearless. They have simply practiced acting while afraid. They understand that fear is a companion, not a commander. They allow it to exist without allowing it to decide. This skill is developed, not inherited. Every confident person you admire once stood exactly where you stand now, uncertain and uncomfortable. The difference is that they moved anyway. Confidence is also strengthened by embracing imperfection. Waiting to be perfect is another form of delay. Growth requires mistakes. Mistakes provide feedback. Feedback sharpens skill. Skill builds confidence. This cycle only begins when you accept that looking foolish temporarily is the price of becoming capable permanently. Those who avoid embarrassment remain inexperienced. Those who accept discomfort evolve quickly. As you act consistently, something important changes internally. You stop identifying as someone who hesitates and start identifying as someone who engages. This identity shift is subtle but transformative. You no longer ask if you are capable. You ask how you can improve. This mindset turns obstacles into information rather than threats. You stop personalizing difficulty and start using it. Confidence also deepens when you realize that most people are too consumed by their own struggles to judge you as harshly as you imagine. Fear often exaggerates consequences. It convinces you that one mistake will define you. In reality, growth is rarely noticed by others in the moment. What they eventually notice is consistency, results, stability, and those come from action repeated over time. This chapter exists to remove a dangerous delay from your life. The delay of waiting to feel ready. You do not need confidence to begin. You need courage to act once, then again, then again. Confidence will follow you naturally, quietly, and permanently. When you stop waiting and start moving, life responds differently. Not because circumstances suddenly change, but because you change. You stop seeing yourself as fragile and start seeing yourself as capable. You stop protecting comfort and start building strength. And once that shift occurs, there is no returning to the old way of living. Confidence is not something you find. It is something you build. And it is built the moment you decide to act despite uncertainty. Chapter 5. Focus is the rarest power in the modern world. There was a time when intelligence, talent, or physical strength separated people. Today, something far more subtle decides who rises and who remains stuck. That difference is focus. Not surface-level concentration, not temporary attention, but the ability to direct your mind intentionally for long periods without surrendering to distraction. In a world designed to fracture attention, the person who can focus deeply holds a quiet but overwhelming advantage. Most people do not realize how distracted they have become because distraction no longer feels abnormal. It feels like life. Constant noise, constant updates, constant stimulation have trained the mind to jump endlessly from one thought to another without ever settling. This creates a restless internal state where nothing feels fully engaging and everything feels mentally exhausting. People confuse this exhaustion with hard work, when in reality it is the fatigue of unmanaged attention. Focus is not about doing more, it is about doing less, but with full presence. It is the ability to give your energy to one task without mentally escaping from it. This sounds simple, but it is rare. Most people sit down to work while their mind remains elsewhere, divided between notifications, worries, comparisons, and impulses. As a result, they spend hours doing what could have been done in minutes. They feel busy but unfulfilled, tired but unaccomplished. The cost of this scattered attention is enormous. When focus is weak, progress becomes slow. When progress is slow, motivation fades. When motivation fades, self-belief erodes. And when self-belief erodes, people begin lowering their expectations to match their performance, instead of raising their performance to meet their expectations. This is how distraction quietly reshapes ambition without ever announcing itself. Focus is power because it creates depth. Depth in learning, depth in skill, depth in thinking. Shallow attention produces shallow results. Deep attention produces mastery. This is why some people advance rapidly while others remain at the same level for years despite equal effort. One works deeply, the other works distracted. The difference compounds over time until it looks like talent, but it was focus all along. Many people think they lack discipline or intelligence, when in reality they lack control over their attention. They try to fix their life by adding more tools, more information, more stimulation, not realizing that the problem is excess. Their mind is overloaded. It cannot think clearly because it never rests in one place long enough to build momentum. Focus is not just a productivity tool. It is a mental environment where clarity can exist. The modern world profits from your distraction. Every interruption pulls you outward. Every notification trains you to respond instead of decide. Over time, this conditions the mind to seek novelty rather than depth. Silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Stillness feels boring. And boredom, which is often the doorway to creativity and insight, is avoided at all costs. This avoidance weakens the mind's ability to stay present with difficulty. When you cannot focus, discomfort feels unbearable. You want to escape the moment instead of engaging with it. This makes hard tasks feel heavier than they are. Focus changes this entirely. When you are fully present, even difficult work becomes simpler because resistance decreases. The mind stops fighting the task and starts cooperating with it. This is not motivation. This is alignment. Focus also sharpens identity. When you give your full attention to something meaningful, you begin to associate yourself with depth rather than noise. You stop identifying as someone who is always behind, always catching up, always overwhelmed. Instead, you become someone who moves deliberately. This identity shift is powerful. It changes how you approach challenges. You no longer panic when work is demanding. You expect depth. You are prepared for it. Another truth most people avoid is that focus requires sacrifice. You cannot focus deeply while consuming endlessly. You cannot build attention while constantly feeding distraction. Something must be reduced for something else to grow. Focus asks you to say no to certain comforts, certain habits, certain patterns of escape. This is uncomfortable at first, but it is freeing later. Because once your focus strengthens, your output multiplies. Deep focus also reveals how much potential has been wasted. When you finally experience working with full attention, you realize how fragmented your previous efforts were. This realization can be painful, but it is also empowering. It shows you that progress was never out of reach. It was just blocked by noise. Remove the noise, and growth accelerates naturally. Focus is not built overnight. It is trained through repetition. Each time you resist distraction and return to the task, you strengthen the muscle. Each time you choose depth over novelty, you regain control. Over time, this changes how your mind operates. You become calmer, more patient, more precise. Your thinking becomes sharper because it is no longer constantly interrupted. People who master focus begin to experience time differently. Hours feel fuller. Days feel purposeful. Life feels less rushed, even when responsibilities increase. This is because focus stretches time subjectively. When you are present, moments expand. When you are distracted, time disappears without memory. Focus gives your life texture. Distraction erases it. The greatest danger of distraction is not lost productivity, it is lost direction. When your attention is constantly pulled outward, you lose connection with your inner voice. You stop hearing what matters. You stop noticing dissatisfaction until it becomes overwhelming. Focus reconnects you to yourself. It allows reflection to occur naturally. It brings awareness back into your decisions. This chapter exists to remind you that focus is not optional if you want an exceptional life. It is foundational. Without it, discipline weakens, habits crumble, and confidence fades. With it, effort becomes effective, learning accelerates, and progress compounds. Focus is the force that turns intention into reality. When you learn to protect your attention, you protect your future, because what you focus on repeatedly is what you become. And when you choose depth in a shallow world, you separate yourself quietly, permanently, and powerfully. Chapter 6. No one is coming to rescue you. There is a moment of truth that changes everything once it is fully accepted, not intellectually, not casually, but deeply, emotionally, and without escape. That moment is the realization that no one is coming to rescue you. Not in the way you secretly hope, not in the way you imagine when life feels overwhelming, not with perfect timing, perfect words, or perfect support. This realization is painful at first because it shatters illusions that once provided comfort, but it is also one of the most freeing truths a human being can ever accept. Many people live their entire lives waiting, even if they never admit it openly. Waiting for someone to notice their effort. Waiting for encouragement. Waiting for permission. Waiting for circumstances to improve. Waiting for motivation to strike. Waiting for clarity to arrive. This waiting feels passive, but it shapes everything. It keeps people in a mental posture of dependency, and dependency, even when subtle, quietly strips power away. From childhood, people are conditioned to believe that guidance will always come from outside. Teachers instruct, parents direct, systems organize. Over time, this creates an expectation that progress requires external structure, but adulthood removes these guardrails. Suddenly, no one is monitoring your effort. No one is enforcing your discipline. No one is correcting your delays. And instead of recognizing this as freedom, many experience it as confusion. Without external pressure, they drift. They do not fail immediately. They simply stop progressing. This is where the fantasy of rescue appears. The idea that something or someone will eventually step in and change everything. A breakthrough opportunity, a perfect mentor, a lucky break, a moment of clarity that removes struggle permanently. But life does not work that way. Rescue fantasies postpone responsibility. They keep you emotionally invested in a future event instead of present action. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start, because time passes quietly and resistance grows stronger. Accepting that no one is coming does not mean you reject support, guidance, or connection. It means you stop expecting them to do the work for you. It means you understand that help can assist, but it cannot replace ownership. You must still wake up and act. You must still decide. You must still endure discomfort. No one can do that on your behalf. This truth is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. When no one is coming, there is no one left to blame, not circumstances, not timing, not upbringing, not luck. Responsibility returns fully to you. And responsibility is heavy when you have been avoiding it. But it is also empowering, because responsibility means control. It means your life is not waiting on permission. It means progress is available the moment you decide to move. Many people resist this truth because it threatens their emotional safety. If no one is coming, then failure feels more personal. Success feels more demanding. There is no buffer, no fallback. But this is exactly what sharpens you. When you realize that your future depends on your daily decisions, those decisions gain weight. You stop wasting time casually. You stop treating effort as optional. You begin showing up differently, not because someone is watching, but because your life depends on it. There is a hidden strength that emerges when you fully accept that rescue is not coming. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for confidence. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You begin acting with what you have, where you are. This shift is subtle but powerful. It moves you from victim thinking to builder thinking. You stop asking why life is hard and start asking how to adapt. People who succeed do not have easier lives. They have stronger internal structures. They have trained themselves to self-regulate, self-direct, and self-correct. When they fall behind, they do not wait for someone to pull them back. They pull themselves back. When they lose motivation, they do not panic. They rely on discipline. When they feel overwhelmed, they simplify and continue. This ability is not talent. It is responsibility practiced daily. Another reason this truth is difficult to accept is because it exposes how much time has already been lost. When you realize that no one was coming all along, regret can surface. You may think about years spent waiting, hoping, delaying. But regret is only destructive if it turns into paralysis. Used correctly, it becomes fuel. It sharpens urgency. It reminds you that time is not guaranteed and that delaying action has a real cost. When you stop waiting for rescue, your standards rise automatically. You stop tolerating chaos. You stop allowing distractions to dominate your schedule. You stop making excuses for habits that weaken you, because you understand that no one else will fix the consequences later. This awareness makes discipline feel less like restriction and more like survival. You are no longer trying to impress anyone. You are trying to protect your future. There is also a deep psychological shift that happens when you accept full ownership. You stop feeling small. You stop feeling like life is happening to you. You begin to feel grounded, solid, capable. Even when things are difficult, there is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that you are not waiting. You are responding. You are adapting. You are building. This chapter is not meant to make you feel alone. It is meant to make you strong. Strength does not come from being rescued. It comes from realizing you can stand on your own. And once you know that, support becomes a bonus, not a requirement. Guidance becomes helpful, not necessary. External motivation becomes optional, not essential. When you fully accept that no one is coming, you stop wasting energy on hope that requires no effort. You replace it with action that produces results. You stop romanticizing struggle and start organizing your life. You stop asking who will save you and start becoming the person who saves yourself. This is the moment where adulthood truly begins, not by age, but by ownership. And once this shift occurs, everything changes, because the most powerful rescuer you will ever have has been with you the entire time, waiting for you to take control. Chapter 7. Pain is not a punishment. It is the process. Pain is one of the most misunderstood experiences in the human journey. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid it, escape it, numb it, or silence it. believing that a good life is one without pain. But this belief quietly weakens them, because pain is not an accident in the process of growth. It is the process. The problem is not that pain exists. The problem is that people were never taught how to interpret it correctly. Pain does not arrive to destroy you, it arrives to change you. But change is uncomfortable by nature. It demands that something old loosens its grip, so something stronger can take its place. This is why growth feels heavy. This is why progress often hurts. You are not being punished. You are being reshaped, and reshaping is never gentle. Most people experience pain and immediately ask the wrong question. They ask why this is happening to them, instead of asking what this moment is trying to build inside them. When pain is interpreted as injustice, it creates bitterness. When pain is interpreted as information, it creates wisdom. The difference between those who grow and those who break is not the amount of pain they experience, but how they understand it. There is no transformation without friction. Muscles grow through resistance. Character grows through pressure. Mental strength grows through endurance. Yet when pain appears in life, many people assume something has gone wrong. They retreat. They soften their standards. They lower their effort. They try to return to comfort as quickly as possible. In doing so, they interrupt the very process that could have strengthened them. Pain exposes truth. It reveals where you are undisciplined, where you are avoiding responsibility, where you are emotionally dependent, where your habits are weak. Comfort hides these things. Pain brings them to the surface. This is why pain feels threatening. It removes illusions. It forces honesty. And honesty is uncomfortable for anyone who has been avoiding themselves. Some pain comes from effort. Some pain comes from loss. Some pain comes from discipline. Some pain comes from regret. The pain that grows you is the pain you choose. The pain that destroys you is the pain you avoid until it finds you anyway. Avoided pain does not disappear. It accumulates. It grows heavier. It returns later with interest. People often say they want an easier life, but an easier life rarely creates a stronger person. Strength is forged, not gifted, and forging requires heat. The moments that shape you most deeply are rarely the moments you enjoy. They are the moments that demand endurance when quitting feels justified. They are the moments where you continue even when no one would blame you for stopping. There is a quiet dignity in pain that is faced willingly. When you endure difficulty without collapsing, something changes internally. You stop seeing yourself as fragile. You begin to recognize your capacity. This recognition is powerful. It creates a deep, unshakable confidence that does not rely on circumstances. You know what you can survive. And once you know that, fear loses much of its power. Pain also slows life down enough for reflection. In comfort, people move quickly and think shallowly. In pain, people pause. They question. They reassess. They strip away distractions. This is why many of life's most important realizations come during difficult seasons. Pain clears noise. It sharpens awareness. It forces you to confront what truly matters. One of the most damaging mistakes people make is trying to numb pain instead of learning from it. They distract themselves endlessly. They stay busy to avoid feeling. They consume to avoid confronting. But numbness delays healing. It keeps lessons incomplete. Pain that is not processed becomes bitterness. Pain that is faced becomes strength. Endurance is a skill, not a personality trait. It is trained. Each time you stay present through discomfort, your tolerance increases. Each time you resist the urge to escape, your resilience grows. Over time, what once felt unbearable becomes manageable, and what becomes manageable no longer controls you. People who succeed long-term are not those who avoid pain, but those who learn to carry it well. They do not dramatize it, they do not romanticize it, they respect it, they listen to it, they use it as feedback. Pain tells you where growth is required. It shows you where resistance lives. It points directly to the edge of your current capacity. There is also pain that comes from letting go of old habits, old identities, old expectations, old versions of yourself that once felt safe. This pain is subtle but deep. It feels like loss because it is loss, but it is necessary loss. You cannot evolve without shedding what no longer fits. Growth demands separation from what you have outgrown. Many people remain stuck, not because growth is impossible, but because they refuse to feel the pain of transition. They cling to familiar suffering instead of facing unfamiliar discomfort. But familiar suffering guarantees a familiar future. Unfamiliar discomfort creates a new one. When you stop viewing pain as an enemy, your relationship with life changes. You stop asking for ease and start building strength. You stop begging for comfort and start earning confidence. You stop fearing hardship and start respecting it. This does not make life painless, it makes life meaningful. Pain does not last forever, but the strength it builds does. This is the part most people miss. They focus on the moment of discomfort and forget the long-term transformation it produces. Growth always costs something. The question is not whether you will pay, but how. You either pay with discipline and effort, or you pay later with regret. This chapter exists to remind you that pain is not proof that you are failing. Often, it is proof that you are moving in the right direction. It is the sound of resistance breaking. It is the feeling of expansion. It is the signal that you are no longer staying small. When you accept pain as part of the process, you stop fighting reality. And when you stop fighting reality, you conserve energy. That energy can then be directed toward progress instead of resistance. This is where real momentum is built. You are not meant to suffer endlessly, but you are meant to endure purposefully. And when you do, something remarkable happens. You emerge stronger, calmer, and more capable than before. Not because pain was kind to you, but because you learned to walk through it without surrendering. That is growth, that is strength, and that is how people are forged, not broken. Chapter 8. Raise your standards or stay stuck. Every life eventually reflects the standards that were tolerated, not the goals that were spoken about, not the dreams that were imagined late at night, but the standards that were accepted quietly, repeatedly, and without protest. Standards are invisible rules you live by, and whether you realize it or not, they are already shaping everything you experience. Most people do not suffer because they want too much. They suffer because they accept too little discipline, too little effort, too little honesty with themselves, too little respect for their own time and energy. And the most dangerous part is that this acceptance becomes normal. What once felt uncomfortable slowly becomes familiar, and familiarity is mistaken for safety. Standards are not declarations. They are behaviors enforced consistently. Anyone can say they want more from life. Few are willing to demand more from themselves every single day. Raising your standards means deciding that certain behaviors are no longer acceptable, even when they feel convenient, even when no one else notices, even when breaking them would be easier in the moment. People often confuse standards with pressure, but standards are not about pushing harder. They are about refusing to live below your capacity. They are about deciding what kind of life you are no longer willing to tolerate. When standards are low, Effort feels optional. When standards are high, effort becomes automatic. Your standards dictate how you respond to difficulty. If your standard is comfort, you quit when things get hard. If your standard is growth, you adapt. If your standard is approval, you hesitate. If your standard is self-respect, you act. Life does not rise to your expectations. It sinks or rises to your standards. Many people unknowingly set their standards based on their past instead of their potential. They look at who they have been instead of who they could become. They measure themselves by old limitations rather than future possibilities. This keeps them trapped in cycles that feel familiar but unfulfilling. Raising your standards requires separating your identity from your history. When you raise your standards, resistance appears immediately. Old habits push back, comfort argues, fear negotiates. The mind searches for justification to stay the same. This resistance is not a sign that your standards are unrealistic. It is a sign that they are finally threatening mediocrity. There is a cost to high standards, and that cost is loneliness at first. When you raise your standards, you outgrow certain environments, conversations, routines, and sometimes people. This does not mean others are wrong. It means you are changing. Growth creates distance before it creates alignment. Many people lower their standards again simply to avoid this temporary discomfort. High standards demand boundaries. Boundaries around time, boundaries around energy, boundaries around distractions. You stop allowing everything to access you. You stop responding to every impulse. You stop saying yes when it weakens you. This is not selfishness. This is survival for anyone serious about growth. Standards also determine how you recover from failure. Low standards make failure an excuse. High standards make failure feedback. When you expect more from yourself, you do not collapse when things go wrong. You correct. You adjust. You continue. High standards do not eliminate mistakes. They eliminate excuses. One of the hardest parts of raising your standards is realizing how much you have been tolerating. Tolerating procrastination. Tolerating distraction. Tolerating inconsistency. Tolerating environments that drain you. This realization can feel heavy, even painful, because it exposes the gap between your current life and your potential. But awareness is the first step toward change. When standards rise, behavior follows. You stop negotiating with yourself every morning. You stop asking if you feel like doing the work. The decision has already been made. This removes mental friction. Life becomes simpler, not easier. Simpler because fewer choices are allowed. You already know what you expect from yourself. People with high standards are not extreme. They are clear. They know what they will not accept from their own behavior. This clarity creates calm. It removes inner conflict. You no longer live in constant self-disappointment because your actions align with your values. Standards shape identity. When you hold yourself to a higher level consistently, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who tries and start identifying as someone who follows through. This identity reinforces itself. You do not want to break your own standards because doing so would break your self-image. There is also a hidden freedom that comes with high standards. When you stop tolerating what weakens you, your energy returns, your focus sharpens, your confidence stabilizes. You are no longer scattered because your life is no longer negotiable. This freedom feels unfamiliar at first because it replaces chaos with order. Most people remain stuck not because they are incapable, but because they never raise the minimum they are willing to accept from themselves. They wait for motivation instead of enforcing standards. Motivation fluctuates, standards remain. Motivation is emotional, standards are structural. This chapter exists to confront you with a simple but demanding truth. The life you want requires a version of you that operates at a higher standard. Not occasionally, not when it feels good, but consistently. And until that standard becomes non-negotiable, progress will always be temporary. Raising your standards is not about becoming harsh. It is about becoming honest. Honest about what is costing you growth. Honest about what must change. Honest about what kind of life you refuse to settle for anymore. Once you raise your standards and refuse to lower them again, something powerful happens. Your life begins to reorganize itself around your new expectations. Opportunities align, habits strengthen, confidence stabilizes. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you became clearer. You do not rise by wishing, you rise by refusing to stay where you are, and that refusal begins with standards. Chapter 9: Consistency is what makes success inevitable. Most people admire intensity. They are impressed by sudden bursts of effort, dramatic motivation, and emotional declarations of change. They celebrate beginnings. They applaud excitement. But life does not reward intensity. Life rewards consistency. And this is why so many people feel betrayed by their effort. They worked hard once, twice, maybe even for a few weeks. And when the results did not arrive quickly, they assumed something was wrong. In reality, nothing was wrong except their understanding of how progress actually works. Consistency is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not feel heroic. It rarely feels exciting. It simply shows up again and again, long after motivation has disappeared and novelty has worn off. This is why consistency is rare. It requires patience in a world addicted to speed. It requires faith in a process that offers delayed rewards. It requires discipline that operates without emotional reinforcement. Most people quit not because the work is too hard, but because the results are too slow. They underestimate how long change takes, and they overestimate how quickly success should appear. This gap between expectation and reality creates frustration. Frustration leads to doubt. Doubt leads to inconsistency. And inconsistency resets progress back to zero every time. Consistency is powerful because it compounds. Small actions repeated daily create momentum that becomes impossible to stop. But compounding is invisible at first. In the early stages, effort feels wasted. Progress feels imaginary. Results feel insulting compared to the energy invested. This is the stage where most people quit, not realizing they are standing right before acceleration begins. Every meaningful achievement follows the same pattern. Long periods of effort with little visible reward, followed by a sudden shift where progress becomes obvious. People call this shift luck or talent, but it is simply consistency reaching critical mass. Those who stop early never experience this moment. They assume it does not exist because they never stayed long enough. Consistency also shapes identity in a way intensity never can. When you act consistently, you stop seeing your behavior as effort and start seeing it as who you are. You are no longer someone who tries sometimes. You become someone who shows up regardless. This identity shift removes internal debate. You do not ask whether you will act. You already know the answer. Many people believe consistency requires extreme discipline, but the truth is that consistency requires commitment to simplicity. Doing fewer things more reliably beats doing many things occasionally. Most people fail because they overload themselves with unrealistic expectations, burn out, then disappear entirely. Consistency is built by choosing actions that can be repeated even on your worst days. There is a dangerous myth that consistency means perfection. It does not. Consistency means returning quickly after interruption. It means refusing to quit completely just because you fell behind. People who succeed are not those who never miss a day. They are those who never miss twice. They understand that progress is not destroyed by mistakes. It is destroyed by abandonment. Consistency also protects you from emotional instability. When your actions depend on mood, your life becomes unpredictable. When your actions depend on structure, your life becomes stable. Stability creates calm. Calm allows focus. Focus improves execution. Execution produces results. Consistency is the thread that connects all of this. One of the hardest truths to accept is that consistency feels boring. And boredom is where most people give up. They mistake boredom for stagnation. They think that if something does not feel exciting, it is not working. But boredom is often the sign that you have moved beyond novelty and into mastery territory. Growth becomes quiet here, subtle, unimpressive, but incredibly powerful. Consistency trains patience. It teaches you to operate without immediate validation. It forces you to trust effort without applause. This is uncomfortable for people who crave recognition, but long-term success is built by those who are willing to work unseen. Consistency does not need witnesses. It only needs repetition. Another reason consistency is rare is because it exposes ego. Ego wants quick wins and visible progress. Ego wants recognition early. Consistency humbles ego because it demands persistence without praise. Those who can endure this humility build something real. Those who cannot keep restarting, chasing the feeling of being new instead of the strength of being reliable. Consistency also eliminates decision fatigue. When you act consistently, fewer decisions are required. You already know what your day includes. You already know what your priorities are. This reduces mental exhaustion. Your energy is no longer spent debating with yourself. It is spent executing. Time behaves differently under consistency. Days may feel slow, but years move fast. People who are inconsistent feel busy every day but look back and realize little has changed. People who are consistent feel repetitive daily but look back and realize everything has changed. This is the paradox of progress. Consistency is also what turns discipline into freedom. At first, structure feels restrictive. Over time, it becomes liberating. You no longer feel scattered. You no longer feel behind. You know what you are doing and why. This clarity creates confidence that does not fluctuate. There is a moment that arrives quietly in the life of someone who stays consistent long enough. They realize that success is no longer a question. It is no longer a hope. It has become inevitable. Not because results have fully arrived yet, but because the process is stable. When the process is stable, outcomes cannot be avoided. This is the moment most people never reach because they quit too early. They leave just before inevitability. They walk away right before momentum becomes self-sustaining. They underestimate how close they were because consistency does not feel dramatic when it is working. It feels ordinary. Consistency also demands honesty. You cannot fake it. You cannot pretend to be consistent. You either show up or you do not. This honesty is uncomfortable because it removes illusions, but it is also empowering because it puts control back in your hands. The world rewards consistency more than talent, more than intelligence, more than luck. Talent opens doors, but consistency keeps them open. Intelligence creates ideas, but consistency turns them into reality. Luck may create opportunity, but consistency determines whether it is wasted or multiplied. This chapter exists to remind you that success is not built by extraordinary effort once. It is built by ordinary effort, repeated without negotiation. The people you admire most did not do something magical. They simply refused to stop. When you choose consistency, you choose a different relationship with time. You stop rushing. You stop panicking. You stop comparing. You understand that if you keep showing up, improvement is guaranteed. This understanding creates peace. Consistency is not exciting, but it is unstoppable. And once you align with it fully, you no longer ask whether success is possible. You know it is coming. Because nothing can stop a person who keeps moving forward, quietly, daily, without quitting. This is the final separation between those who dream and those who build, between those who start and those who finish, between those who hope and those who arrive. Consistency does not promise speed. It promises certainty, and certainty is the rarest luxury in life. Chapter 10. Become the person your future demands. At some point in life, effort alone is no longer enough. Hard work without alignment becomes exhausting. Discipline without identity becomes fragile. Consistency without purpose becomes mechanical. This is where many people feel stuck despite doing everything right. They are working, trying, pushing, but something still feels missing. What is missing is not another strategy. It is a deeper transformation. The realization that success does not arrive when you chase it harder, but when you become the kind of person it naturally follows. Your future is not asking for more motivation. It is asking for a different version of you, a version with stronger standards, clearer boundaries, deeper patience, and greater emotional control. A version that does not panic when results are delayed. A version that does not negotiate with excuses. A version that does not require constant reassurance to keep moving forward. Becoming this person is the real work. Everything else is surface level. Most people imagine their future self as someone lucky, confident, and accomplished, but they rarely imagine the discipline, discomfort, and responsibility that future self had to accept to exist. They want the outcome without the identity shift. But identity always comes first. You do not become confident and then act. You act with uncertainty until confidence is earned. You do not become successful and then disciplined. You become disciplined long enough for success to appear. Becoming is uncomfortable because it requires separation from who you have been. Old habits resist. Old thought patterns argue. Old comfort zones pull you backward. The mind tries to preserve familiarity, even when familiarity is limiting. This is why growth feels like loss before it feels like gain. You are losing versions of yourself that no longer fit. This loss is necessary. You cannot carry every past identity into the future. The person your future demands does not wait for permission. They do not ask repeatedly if they are capable. They do not pause every time fear speaks. They acknowledge doubt, then continue anyway. They understand that courage is not loud confidence. It is quiet persistence. It is the decision to act even when the outcome is uncertain. This future version of you understands time differently. They do not waste it casually. They respect it because they understand its cost. They know that every delayed action has a consequence, even if it is invisible at first. They stop romanticizing procrastination and start seeing it for what it is: self-betrayal disguised as comfort. Becoming also requires emotional maturity, the ability to sit with frustration without reacting impulsively, the ability to endure boredom without escaping, the ability to face criticism without collapsing. The future version of you is not immune to emotion. They are skilled at managing it. They do not allow emotion to dictate behavior. They allow values to lead instead. Many people stay stuck because they are loyal to their current identity. They defend habits that no longer serve them because those habits feel familiar. They cling to stories about who they are and what they can handle. Becoming requires rewriting those stories through action. You do not change your self-image by thinking differently. You change it by behaving differently long enough for the mind to accept the evidence. The person your future demands understands that growth is not linear. There will be setbacks, plateaus, periods of doubt. But they do not interpret these moments as failure. They see them as part of the process. They respond with adjustment, not abandonment. This response is what separates those who evolve from those who repeat the same year endlessly. Becoming also means accepting that you will be misunderstood during the process. When you change, not everyone will recognize the new direction immediately. Some will question you, some will doubt you. Some will feel uncomfortable because your growth reflects their stagnation. The future version of you does not seek approval from those who do not share the same vision. They remain respectful, but they remain committed. This chapter exists to make one thing clear. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not incapable. You are simply being asked to rise to a higher level of responsibility. And that rise does not happen all at once. It happens through daily decisions that align you more closely with the person you are becoming. One day, quietly, without ceremony, you realize something has changed. You react differently. You think differently. You tolerate less chaos. You require less validation. You trust yourself more. This is not an accident. This is the result of becoming, of choosing alignment over comfort repeatedly. Success is not something you chase across years of effort. It is something you grow into. And when you grow into it, it no longer feels heavy. It feels natural, deserved, earned. The future you are imagining is not waiting for a perfect moment. It is waiting for you to become strong enough to carry it. And that strength is built now, in ordinary days, in disciplined choices, in quiet consistency, in becoming. If you have listened this far, understand something clearly. This was never just an audiobook you happened to play. This was a mirror, a moment of honesty, a quiet confrontation with who you have been and who you are capable of becoming. Nothing here was meant to impress you. It was meant to awaken you. You have now heard the truth from every angle. That success does not arrive through wishing. That confidence is built through action. That discipline is self-respect made visible. That habits quietly shape destiny. That focus is power. That no one is coming to rescue you. That pain is part of growth. That standards define your life, that consistency makes success inevitable, and that ultimately, everything changes the moment you decide to become the person your future demands. But knowledge alone changes nothing. This moment is the line. On one side is the life where you understood, agreed, felt inspired, and then returned to the same patterns. On the other side is the life where something shifted permanently, where you stopped waiting, where you stopped negotiating, where you stopped treating your potential casually. Transformation does not announce itself. It begins quietly, often with a single decision made when no one is watching. A decision to act differently tomorrow, a decision to respect your time, a decision to keep your word to yourself, a decision to endure discomfort instead of escaping it. You do not need to become someone else overnight. You do not need to fix everything at once. You only need to stop abandoning yourself. The smallest consistent action taken from this moment forward carries more power than years of wishing. There will be days when this feels heavy, days when doubt returns, days when progress feels slow. Remember this then: growth is not loud, strength is not dramatic. The most powerful changes happen quietly, deep beneath the surface, long before results appear. One day, not far from now, you will look back at this version of yourself with respect, not because life became easy, but because you became strong, because you stopped running, because you stayed, because you showed up. This is not the end of something. It is the beginning of alignment, the beginning of a life lived with intention instead of impulse, with discipline instead of delay, with ownership instead of excuses. Success does not begin when the world believes in you. It begins when you take yourself seriously. And from this moment forward, that choice is yours. Silence this audiobook now, not because the message is over, but because it is time to live it.